I'm sitting by the window right now, a cup of tea warming my hands. Outside, the world feels muted, like everything's wrapped in a soft gray blanket. The rain isn't falling hard, just quietly tracing down the glass in slow streaks. It's one of those days where time moves differently. Slower, gentler. And I think maybe that's exactly what we need sometimes. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for being here. If this space brings you a little peace or helps you feel a little more like yourself, it would mean a lot if you'd take a moment to like this episode, subscribe, or even share it with someone who might need this gentle reminder today. And if you feel like it, I'd love to hear from you in the comments. Where are you listening from? And what part of yourself are you slowly learning to come home to? Maybe you're lying down or walking slowly through a quiet street. Maybe you're listening in the middle of a messy day, looking for something steady to hold. Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. Not because you have something to prove, just because you're you. And that's already enough. Today's been quiet for me too. One of those introspective days where the heart speaks softly, and if I'm still enough, I can actually hear it. There's been this tug inside me lately, a sort of longing. Not for more, but for less. Less noise. Less pretending. Less shape-shifting just to fit into someone else's story. Have you ever wondered when that all started? That silent agreement we make with the world to hide our quirks, dull our sparkle, keep our truth tucked inside so it won't make anyone uncomfortable? Sometimes it begins so early we don't even remember the first time. Maybe it was the way someone raised an eyebrow when you laughed a little too loud. Or the way a teacher paused when you shared an answer no one else thought of. Or maybe it was when you dressed differently, spoke differently, loved differently, and instead of being met with curiosity, you were met with correction. Little moments. Soft stings. And slowly, almost invisibly, you began to shift. You adjusted. Smoothed the edges. Made yourself easier to hold, but harder to recognize. I know that feeling deeply. I've been that person, shrinking my joy to match the room, biting my tongue just to keep the peace, agreeing to things I didn't believe in because I thought that's what it meant to be accepted. But the truth is, I was slowly losing sight of myself in the name of fitting in. There's this soft sorrow that comes with forgetting your own voice. It doesn't scream, it whispers. In the quiet moments, when the noise stops and you suddenly realize, I don't know what I like anymore. I don't remember the last time I felt like me. But what if I told you that you're allowed to come back? What if you could return, not to who you were, but to who you are underneath all the expectations? The version of you who still laughs too loud sometimes, who still dreams wildly, who still carries that tender softness, even if the world called it weakness. We don't talk enough about the courage it takes to be yourself. Not the curated version, not the performance, but the real you. The messy, thoughtful, sensitive, brave you. The one who doesn't always have the right words but still wants to speak. The one who aches to belong but not at the cost of their soul. That's the version I'm learning to honor. Slowly, gently, with patience. And maybe that's what this moment is for. A breath, a pause. A chance to stop reaching for more and instead reach inward for softness, for truth, for home. So I want to ask you, quietly, gently, what parts of yourself have you been editing lately? What truths have you been whispering only when no one else is listening? Where in your life have you traded realness for approval? Just sit with that for a second. No need to answer right now. Let the question rest in you like a stone in still water. Let it ripple. Let it move something. Because this isn't about being better. It's about being real. And that means allowing your story to take up space. Even the parts that still feel uncertain or tender or unfinished. I'll be honest with you, some days returning to yourself feels like walking through fog. You don't always know what's next. But every time you choose honesty over performance, every time you speak when your voice trembles, every time you choose rest over hustle, you're building that home again. Inside you. You are not too late to return. You're not too far gone to remember. You're not too broken to begin again. So take this breath. Let it be enough. Let you be enough. You don't have to impress me. You don't have to impress anyone. Just breathe. Just be here. Just begin. I remember a time not too long ago when I thought that fitting in would finally make things easier. That if I could just be the kind of person others expected, life would run more smoothly. No resistance. No rejection. Just a quiet kind of belonging. But here's what no one tells you about fitting in. It's often not real. It's survival. It's performance. It's carrying a mask that becomes heavier the longer you wear it. Maybe you've done this too. Maybe you've walked into a room and felt the unspoken rule. Be smaller, be lighter, be something more like them. So you adjust. Not because you want to lie, but because it feels safer than the truth. You laugh at the right time. Nod even when you disagree. Dress in ways that don't feel like you. Hide the parts of yourself that feel too loud, too soft, too emotional, too much. You spend so much time trimming yourself down that eventually you start to forget what it felt like to be whole. And at first, it works. People like you, they smile. They say you're easy to be around. And a part of you sighs in relief. Okay, I did it. I made myself acceptable. But the cost. You start waking up tired, not just physically, but in your soul. You dread conversations that used to spark you. You feel invisible in rooms where you used to shine. You find yourself apologizing for things that aren't even wrong. And worst of all, you begin to feel like a stranger in your own life. Because when we shrink ourselves to fit someone else's mold, we don't just lose parts of our personality, we lose the thread of our own story. I want to ask you something gently. Have you been doing that lately? Have you been nodding when you want to speak? Smiling when you want to cry? Going along just to get along? If so, I see you. And more importantly, I understand you. Because fitting in isn't always a conscious choice. Sometimes it happens slowly, like water shaping a rock, one small compromise at a time. And before you realize it, the shape of your life has changed. But here's the thing about truth. It waits. Quietly. Patiently. It doesn't disappear, even when you bury it under layers of performance. Your truth, the real you, sits just beneath the surface, aching to be known. And the moment you stop pretending, even just a little, that truth rises. Like a spring breaking through dry ground. I want to offer you something today that I wish someone had offered me years ago. A permission slip. A soft, invisible permission to not fit in. To stand out. To take up space. To speak even if your voice is shaking. Because the people who really matter, they're not asking you to be the same. They're waiting to see the real you. I've come to believe that there's a quiet heartbreak that happens when you're loved for who you pretend to be. Because even in the moment of connection, something inside you knows it's not real. They don't love me, they love the mask. And that emptiness, it lingers. So what would it feel like to be loved without performing? What would it feel like to be seen and still chosen? What if you didn't have to earn belonging, but simply allowed it? Fitting in and belonging, they're not the same thing. Fitting in asks you to change. Belonging asks you to come home. And maybe, just maybe, home isn't a place or a person. It's a feeling you carry when you're finally at peace with yourself. You're allowed to create that feeling. You're allowed to say, this is who I am. And I may not be for everyone, but I'm still for me. I want you to think about this the next time you're in a room that asks you to shrink. The world doesn't need another version of someone else. It needs more of you. Your tone, your pace, your strange and beautiful perspective. That's not something to hide. That's something to offer. And yes, offering your truth comes with risk. Not everyone will clap. Not everyone will stay. But the ones who do, those are the people who see you fully and love you wholly. And isn't that worth it? Let yourself soften into your own rhythm again. Let yourself belong, not by fitting into a space, but by filling it honestly. You don't need to fold yourself into silence. You don't need to wear your discomfort like armor. You don't need to disappear just so others can feel comfortable. There's room here for your whole self. Always. So take a breath with me. In and out. That feeling stirring in your chest right now, that's the truth rising. Let it. There's a quiet kind of bravery I want to talk about today. The kind that doesn't make headlines or echo in applause. The kind that doesn't feel loud but feels true. And it begins the moment you stop asking, how can I be more like them? And start asking, what does it mean to be fully myself? I think sometimes we underestimate how much courage that takes. The world loves sameness. It celebrates trends, boxes, standards. There's a comfort in the familiar, in knowing how to label something or someone. So when you show up with your own rhythm, your own colors, your own voice that doesn't follow the script, you might find yourself standing alone. And that's where the fear comes in. Not the kind of fear that makes your heart race and panic, but the slower one, the quieter one, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of being too much, the fear of never quite belonging. But let me say this as gently as I can. Being different is not a flaw. It's not a mistake to correct or a weakness to overcome. Being different is a kind of power, a quiet, sacred one, the kind that moves things, that shifts rooms, that plants new seeds in old places. Think about someone you admire deeply, not because they fit in, but because they stood out. The friend who listens deeply instead of talking over others. The teacher who brought warmth into a cold system. The artist who made something weird and beautiful and honest. These people didn't succeed despite their differences. They succeeded because of them. And the same can be true for you. But it starts with honoring those things that make you feel other. The way you think differently. Love differently. Process the world with more softness or more curiosity or more depth than most people seem ready for. When I was younger, I used to think that if I could just flatten out my oddities, smooth the bumps, round the corners, then everything would feel easier. I'd be accepted. I'd be invited in. And for a while I was. But what no one tells you is that ease bought with self-abandonment is not real ease. It's temporary peace built on permanent exhaustion. I was tired of performing. Tired of saying the right thing. Tired of hiding the things that made me feel most alive. It's like living in a house with the lights off. You move around in it, sure, but you're always a little disoriented. So I started small. I began speaking in my real voice even when it trembled. I let my awkwardness show instead of polishing it away. I gave up trying to be impressive and chose to be honest. And slowly something shifted. I noticed the right people came closer. Not the loudest people, not the ones who needed me to be anything other than real, but the ones who saw me, stayed, and softened too. Because here's the truth. Your difference is an invitation. It's a quiet signal to others who feel just as out of step, just as unsure, just as tender in this world. When you live as your full self, you're not just freeing you. You're giving permission to everyone else who needed to see that it was possible. And yes, there will be days when it's hard. When you'll wonder if the effort is worth it. When you'll feel like going back to the version of you that was easier to explain. Easier to like. But please remember, liking isn't the same as loving. And approval is not the same as connection. True connection begins when we stop hiding, You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to be popular to be worthy. You don't have to have all the answers to be valuable. Your strength might show up differently. It might look like writing a few quiet lines in your journal, or saying no without guilt, or standing in a room and feeling completely different and staying anyway. That's bravery too. In a world that tells you to harden, choosing softness is a form of resistance. In a culture that pushes sameness, choosing difference is a revolution. And in a time that rewards the polished, choosing to be raw is your power. So today, I want to offer you something: a deep, slow breath and a reminder. You were not made to be a copy. You were made to be a story. A living, breathing, unfolding truth that no one else can tell quite like you. Don't dilute your difference. Don't flatten your fire. The world needs your voice. Not a louder one, not a fancier one, just yours. So take the leap. Step outside the mold. Say the strange thing. Wear the weird color. Love the wrong person. Dream the impossible dream. Let yourself be unmistakably, unapologetically, beautifully different. Because the world doesn't need more of the same. It needs more you. There was a night a few years ago that still lingers in my memory. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something quiet finally cracked open inside me. I had just come home from a long week. One of those weeks where every smile feels a little too forced, every conversation a little too rehearsed. I remember closing the front door behind me, dropping my keys onto the table and sitting on the floor. No music, no distractions, just silence. And in that silence, a thought rose up, clear and painful. I don't even know who I am anymore. That moment didn't come with fireworks or tears. It was just still. But it changed everything. Because for the first time, I saw how much of myself I had been editing, softening, packaging into something more acceptable. Not to deceive anyone, just to belong, to avoid discomfort, to keep the peace. Have you ever felt like that? Like you're playing a role in someone else's play? Smiling when you'd rather rest? Agreeing when your heart says no? Dressing or speaking or even dreaming in ways that feel foreign, but safer? Masks come in so many forms. Some look like confidence. Some look like kindness. Some even look like success. But underneath, there's often a deep fatigue. A quiet grief for the version of ourselves we keep tucking away. Here's the truth that took me years to learn. Performing doesn't protect us from pain. It just delays the moment when we finally feel it. And often it adds a new kind of hurt, the ache of not being fully known. And let's be honest, sometimes the world rewards the mask. You get the job, the invitation, the applause. But what does it mean if they're clapping for someone you're not? What does it mean if the life you're building doesn't actually fit the shape of your soul? That night on the floor, I didn't make any grand decisions. I didn't rip the mask off and suddenly live my truth. That's not how change works, not the real kind. What I did was smaller, quieter. I started to notice. I noticed when I was saying yes out of guilt, not desire. I noticed when I laughed at jokes I didn't find funny just to keep from standing out. I noticed the clothes in my closet that didn't feel like me. The books I said I liked because others did. The way I adjusted my opinions to avoid confrontation. And with each noticing came a question. What would feel more honest right now? That question changed everything. It made me pause before speaking. It made me say no with more ease. It helped me walk into rooms with less armor. And slowly, the people who truly saw me, who wanted to see me, stayed. Others drifted. And yes, that part was hard. Letting go always is. But the peace that came from being myself was far more lasting than any approval I had to perform for. There's a myth we carry that being ourselves will cost us everything. That if we stop pleasing, we'll be alone. That if we stop pretending, we'll be rejected. But here's a softer possibility. What if letting go of the mask doesn't leave you with nothing, but finally makes room for everything that's real? What if being honest doesn't push people away, but brings the right people closer? The ones who aren't interested in your perfection. The ones who don't need you to entertain, impress, or adjust. The ones who love your laugh, even when it comes at the wrong time. The ones who stay for your silences as much as your stories. Letting go of the mask isn't about being raw all the time. It's not about sharing everything or being loud about your truth. It's about alignment. About feeling at home in your body. About speaking words that echo inside your chest instead of bouncing off the walls you built to protect yourself. And yes, protection has its place. There are times when safety matters more than honesty. We don't always have the space or support to be vulnerable. That's okay. But when you do have the chance, I hope you take it. I hope you pause before slipping into performance. I hope you give yourself the gift of being real. Because when we stop managing our image, we start healing our soul. And healing doesn't always look like progress. Sometimes it looks like rest. Like stillness. Like saying, I don't have the energy to be anything other than myself today. That's not laziness. That's truth. That's brave. So if you've been performing lately, even just a little, maybe today is your quiet permission to take off the costume. To sit in your softness. To breathe in your own rhythm. To stop editing your story for someone else's comfort. You're not a character. You're the author. Write something that feels like you. This morning, I watched the sun rise through a pale blue sky. No fanfare. No explosion of color. Just quiet light spilling over rooftops and waking up the world. It wasn't trying to impress anyone. It simply showed up, and that was enough. And it made me wonder, why is it so hard for us to believe the same about ourselves? Why do we keep waiting for a milestone, a transformation, some invisible after version of us, before we'll allow ourselves to rest or feel proud or believe we're worthy of love? I don't know about you, but I've carried this quiet voice inside me for years. One that whispers, not yet. Not yet enough. Not yet ready. Not yet lovable. It's sneaky, that voice. It tells you that once you're more productive, more attractive, more put together, then you'll finally feel peace. Finally feel worthy. Finally feel like you belong in your own life. But here's what I've come to believe, softly but fully. Worth is not something you earn. It's something you carry. It lives in you, even when you forget it. Even when the world tells you to be more. Even when your reflection feels unfamiliar or your path looks slower than everyone else's. You don't need to reach some imaginary finish line to start treating yourself with tenderness. You don't need to prove anything to be allowed to rest. You don't need to be perfect to be enough. You already are. Right here. Right now. As you are. And maybe no one told you that before. Maybe you grew up hearing more about performance than presence. Maybe you learned to associate love with achievement. Maybe you mistook approval for connection. But love, real love, doesn't wait for perfection. It meets you in the messy, in the trying, in the quiet unfolding of your real, honest life. I want to say something to the part of you that still doubts this, that still feels too much or not enough. You don't have to hide the soft parts of you. You don't have to apologize for your sadness. You don't have to be inspiring to be valuable. You are a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time. And that's not a contradiction, it's a truth. Life isn't a race to some better version of you. It's a slow remembering of the self you've always been, before the noise, before the pressure, before the edits. And yes, there are things you'll still want to grow into. Habits to change. strengths to build. But growth doesn't require self-rejection. You can evolve and love yourself now. You can choose progress without punishment. You can aim for more without disowning the beauty of who you are today. So if you're tired of fixing, tired of faking, tired of chasing some better version of yourself, I hope you let this moment be enough. Take the pressure off. Breathe into your own pace. Let the world spin without needing to keep up. There is no prize for burnout, no trophy for hiding your heart. But there is joy in slowness. There is freedom in softness. There is healing in saying, I'm enough as I am. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not too late or too complicated or too far gone. You are human. And being human means you are allowed to take up space, even if you're still figuring things out. It means you're allowed to be loved without conditions. It means your voice matters, even if it shakes. So today, this quiet, ordinary day, what would it feel like to simply be enough? To not fix, to not perform, to not hustle, just to be? What if your softness wasn't a flaw but a kind of wisdom? What if your differences weren't burdens but quiet gifts the world hasn't learned how to honor yet? What if your life doesn't need to be impressive, it just needs to feel true? You don't need to be more like her, or him, or them. You just need to be more like you. Because you, right now, with all your questions and imperfections and learning, are a once and forever story. No one else sees the world quite like you do. No one else can offer your exact light. And that's not something you have to fight for. That's something you can simply be. So as we close this space, I want you to hear this one more time. You don't have to become someone else to be worthy of love. You already are. Let that truth settle into your bones. Let it soften your shoulders. Let it whisper to the parts of you still waiting for permission. You are already enough. You always have been, and you always will be.